10 years, 43 lives, 43 names, 43 dreams, 43 sons, 43 brothers, 43 hopes. We are missing 43. A decade of painful journey in the search of truth and justice, in the search of our children. Our voices are no longer the same. They are stronger than ever, and no one will silence them. We stand until we find them, because they took them alive, and we want them back alive. These are the words of the mothers and the fathers of Ayotzinapa. They were pronounced a little more than a month before, like in the 10th anniversary of this tragedy that took place in September 2014. This session precisely today aims to discuss the justice or injustice in this case, known as the Ayotzinapa case. And I welcome everyone, and I thank you all of you for being here to meet us, to discuss with Omar Gómez Trejo, to whom I also welcome, and we are very pleased to have him here because he was the former lead prosecutor of this case. So thank you very much, Omar. I will present you in a few minutes, but thank you. Let me introduce myself. My name is Agustina Becerra Vázquez. I'm a teaching assistant at the Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights. And let me now introduce a bit this activity to contextualize. This is the first session of our series, Voices from the Ground, Accountability for International Human Rights Violations, which is an activity, an extracurricular activity of our masters, the Master in Transitional Justice and Human Rights, the LLM in Humanitarian Law and Human Rights, and the Executive Master of the Geneva Academy. I invite all of you to check the masters. The applications are now open. So the idea of this activity is to give our students the opportunity to engage, to complement the theoretical knowledge of the masters by speaking, engaging with experts, activists, people involved in justice and accountability processes around the world. This first session, as I said, is about the Ayotzinapa case, Mexico. This is the first year also we have a first part which is public, this webinar of 1 hour. And then we will have a closed session for our students for a Q&A more intimate with Omar to give them the opportunity to engage. So now I will introduce Omar. As I said, we are very honored and pleased to have him because he was the lead prosecutor of the special criminal unit created by the Mexican state back in 2019 in this case. And he also has experience previously as part of the expert group, which was appointed by the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. So we are very grateful because Omar has this background, which is very rich and mixed between criminal justice and human rights, which is not always the case. We are or criminal or human rights people. So now with moderating this event with me, is Anna Srovin Corali, which is a colleague and friend, which is a former TA also at the Geneva Academy, and she's completing her PhD precisely on the topic of enforced disappearance. So thank you, Anna, also for joining us today.
Thank you, and thanks for saying that I'm completing my PhD. It makes me feel like I'm almost there. So
we are all, yeah. So regarding the dynamic of the event, we will have in this webinar, the aim is to have 45 minutes of discussion. We will pose with Anna some questions to Omar. And then please put your questions in the Q&A section in this Zoom. And with Anna, we will select some questions depending on the time. So please put all your questions there and we will post them. So now we can start. The floor to Anna to start with the comment question. Yeah.
Just to add remark on the question, so as the webinar evolves, as Agustina said, please feel free to drop them in case we don't manage to address your question. We would also encourage you can get in touch with us after this webinar. Perhaps we'll share our emails And we can also then continue the conversation with Omar. So please don't leave this space frustrated in case we don't manage to address your question. We promise we'll make our best to do this afterwards. So I am extremely excited to be here because in the past I was chasing Omar for quite some time when I was working in the Mexican context. But at the time he was a special prosecutor and he was not really able to speak to me. So today we have him here. I wish you would be still working on the case, Omar, but it's a pretty unique opportunity to have a person like you with such a combination of different experiences here. So we really feel very privileged, and for sure we will learn from your experience. But before we do that, just to put us all on the same page, could you perhaps share with me like a short summary, a few sentences on what actually happened on the 26th of September 2014? So who are really these 43 students who at the end of the day have names? Where were they traveling to? Why were they disappeared? So a very short summary of that day or that night.
Thank you very much. Hi to everyone, and thank you for the Geneva Academy, for Agustina and Anna to give me this space. Well, the 43 students is a case that you can talk from different perspectives, and because it's really a complex case. But the 43 students is a case that has created like even several international and national mechanism. But the students, they were like Agustina said, the people with dreams, and that they're missing out, and they need to be fine, and they were rural. They study in a rural school, which is a symbol of the lefty side, is the deepest one in Mexico, in one particular state, which is Guerrero. Shares like a long history about people to try to fight what they think they believe, and part of the guerrillas in the 60s and 70s were raised in Guerrero, and we have even emblematic cases from that era in the judges and ruling by the Inter-American system. But yeah, this is probably the symbol of the students. This group of students reflects that the part of the poorest communities, because they teach in the poorest communities, but they can just travel not only in Guerrero, even all around the country. They travel all around the country. They teach all around the country when they graduate from this school. Mostly of them speak in like indigenous and language and Spanish, and normally they work in rural schools, like elementary schools or secondary schools. But yeah, this is a very, very special school too, because the way like they raise the education tools for the students more close to the lefty and socialists, and this kind of ways to reflect a country.
But was it really so the idea that Ayotzinapa school is linked with, so the case is called Ayotzinapa because of this rural school, as you said, and these 43 students from Ayotzinapa on the 26th of September, they were traveling to Mexico City, and as they did that, right, they crossed a smaller city called Iguala in the state of Guerrero, which you mentioned, which has, as you said, a long history, on basically on violence. And was it then the idea of these students being the leftists, was this used by the state and other actors which were involved in disappearance of the students on that night? Or what was really the reason behind disappearance of these 43 young.
Yeah, you're right. This is part of the part of the investigation that I conduct in 2019, 2022. So I hold that position for 3 years and 3 months. And part of the investigation was that. But that day, September 26th, you know, they wanted to gather buses, kidnap buses to travel to Mexico City to the commemoration of the October 2nd, 1968 massacre that occurs in Mexico City. So part of the commitments, but this school, the rural school of Ayotzinapa has, it was try to gathering the buses who can transport the whole older rural schools and also Ayotzinapa to Mexico City by October 2nd. So they were trying to collect buses. They already have some days before the event of the disappearance. Um, and the way like they travel to Iguala is because the federal police authorities and the local police from Guerrero State block the access to Chilpancingo, which is the nearest city to the rural school. So that's why they took the north side of the city. And they arrived to Iguala in the skirts of the city of Iguala Guerrero, and that's what they settled in two different points. So that they wanted to gather those buses because Iguala is probably the second largest city in Guerrero, in the state of Guerrero. So there's a lot of communications and a lot of buses arriving to that city too. It was a Friday, which is important because that's an important link with the activities of the cartel that was part of this, entramado of different forces working as together at the same place to control the territory, to smuggle drugs, to kidnap, to disappear people. That was part of the investigation that we conduct. And obviously, it was not, we discover everything. This case happens in 2014. Like I say, I arrived in 2019, so 5 years later. And the first authorities who started the investigation was the Fiscalía in Guerrero, and then the federal authority attract the case for the federal level immediately, like days after the case happened. So this is part of the main part. They're very clear that why the students were kidnapped. So part of this is really important because you touching a very strong element, which is racism in Mexico. They were brown, they were short, they were indigenous, they were from poor communities, they were rural. And one of the main vision that we can see in the investigation, that we saw in the investigation during the time that I did it, it was the how the authorities reflect uh, that position, and how they just conduct to the students. Like they call it the Ayotzinapos, which is very, it's a large charge of things in the back of that word.
Is it a bit discriminatory, even a bit discriminatory, a bit offensive?
Yeah. It's offensive, of course. This is, and also another bad words around this expression, but mostly of them were like, and obviously we receive even answers from authorities like say, well, what are we supposed to protect those kids who just doing bad things, and they kidnap buses and bro. So this was part of the aspects that you can reflect in a criminal investigation, because it's part of the modulus even that can give you some give you reasons for the detentions, for the places to they were holded, and also for the disappearance too.
And you said something very important, which is that the government somehow then started at the state level, right? So the prosecutor's office at the state level started investigation very shortly after. This was then basically assumed by the federal prosecutor's office. And this office, just a few months after disappearances, basically generated this narrative, which they called la historia, they called it la verdad histórica de los hechos, so the historical truth, which to my knowledge somehow triggered a huge polemics in Mexico. And I'm not sure whether this was related to the fact that this was a rather common narrative, that whenever the disappeared persons were people like members of the community, which were anywhere, facing different challenges in the society, did the government perhaps think that with this verdad histórica, the historical truth, they will very shortly manage to close investigation, close this chapter, and not face any more questions from the society? Or what do you think was the purpose of the government creating this historical truth? And was there any truth in it at all?
Just taking some notes of this. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take 2 steps back, starting like immediately the disappearance happens in Iguala Guerrero. This create a really social movement created by the families and the supporters, the lawyers and the NGOs around the families. And there's a lot of large demonstrations in Mexico City, in another main cities in Mexico, and also in other parts in the world. So this created obviously a pressure for the state authorities, and they wanted to resolve immediately. So part of this, you know, because this is really important for me to recall the value of the people around the families, and I'm talking about NGOs and lawyers who help them, and they keep helping the families now. They take this case to a provisional measure to the Inter-American system. So they start using international tools to bring some pressure to the authorities. And that gives a chance to create this group of experts, which was the newest formula by the Inter-American system. This was the first, this group of experts reflects something, and this is really important and to call. So you get the frustrations and the anger of the families. Then you have this taking this in something to translate to Inter-American Commission, and they give the chance to create a group of experts. So the government immediately they take the case, they attract the case. They before the case happened, they start conducting several actions of investigation. There's a large amount of people who start working in Guerrero, in that area, from the federal authorities. And 1 month later, you have 2 places discovered by witnesses of the what the authorities say they participated in the crime and the disappearance. And the historical truth, as you say, it was a false history who was created by the authorities during that time. And I said this because that's part of the investigation that we conduct too. We only not conduct in 2019 the disappearance of the students. We also conduct the cover up what the authorities create for just to close the case. And the intention was that was the main intention, to close the case, send the families back to their places and say, please receive the money your kid just finished here and keep your life. And that's the dignity of the families, who is like creating this kind of strong positions and say, no, we don't believe that. We wanted to find our kids, and we want to find the truth. So that's what it gives the chance to this group of experts arrive in Mexico, start working with the authorities with the investigation. Obviously, the first thing what the experts did was reviewing the investigation of the cover-up and also the investigation of the disappearance, what the actual authorities had in that time. And that's what the experts, by their expertises, discovered like several things that doesn't match. And you can see that in investigation. There's pieces that it doesn't match, it doesn't make any sense. So they request, for example, part of the actions they did, they request a expertise report from a expert on fire, Jose Torero. So like just a question that, is there any chance to burn 43 bodies of people in an open space by a couple branches, tires, some gasoline, and by the finish of that, you can just get small pieces very damaged by fire of mourned remains? And that was the first question they did and to this expert, and he came with a report. So that was the first report of the experts they released in 2015 September, and obviously that changed the
Marking
vision of
something
the
here.
state. Yep.
That's a good question because you're mentioning the expert group. And one of the questions we thought it was interesting to see, as you mentioned, this is a kind of unique case because of the unique reaction, this immediate reaction from the Inter-American system. Do you think was the role of this expert group mechanism and this kind of interaction could be a new kind of model or way to think how to push justice in cases where states we don't have still a transition, for instance? Or what do you think? What was the role of this mechanism in pushing justice in the case of Ayotzinapa?
Just to
Totally
add to what Agustina said, because I think we never said the full name of the group of experts that we speak of. We speak of, I think it was the interdisciplinary group of independent experts. And I think the members were people like Claudia Paz y Paz, no, who were known for dealing with high-level cases in their known country, where there was a collusion between organized crime and state crime as well. No, just, yeah.
Yeah. This is something that we can reflect, have a reflection about it, because you get this particular people who is expertise in something and you just put it together, and that's a good thing. It's like the inquiry commissions in the UN system. It's like the fact-finding missions now that it's, this branch of accountability that UN system has. So it's probably this, it's not the same figures, but this is similar, the kind of actions. It's like one thing, and that's why I just try to recall the positions of the family, is like we don't trust in the authorities in Mexico. We have a large scale of impunity now, even 10 years ago, it was probably the same. So the main position was like, we don't trust in our authorities. So what we can do? So you can't just cross your arms and just stay sitting there. No, the reaction was really positive about the international mechanism. The state accepted it, and they invited the experts to come to Mexico and review the investigation and participate in the actions of investigation for the case with the authorities too. Obviously, this group has a really strong muscle of autonomy to they conduct their own investigation, and that will give you another vision of the case. And that's why I say, so I mean, yeah, you right, government, you did a great effort to try to find the students and try to produce the truth, but is not holding by the evidences that you have in your case. And that someone came from outside and told you that in a strong investigation, such as the government in that during that time assume, that's a really strong position. So that's because they have the background and the support of international mechanisms. And this is probably one of the ways to break the impunity in this kind of cases, is in the Inter-American system, we have 4 experiences. The first one was the Ayotzinapa case. The second one was the situation in Nicaragua in 2017-18. The third one was the situation in Bolivia, and now they will create a new one for a new case in another country. So this is probably something really interesting that we need to think about it, to encourage more governments to accept this kind of independent expertise to
Why do
try
you
to
think they
break.
accepted this team? Because it seems paradoxical that on the one hand they were like blocking investigations, they wanted to close the case, but at the same time they accepted this expert group to to check.
That was a lot of pressure, I think. I believe that there's a lot of pressure, social pressure. There's the people was in the streets just demanding their students return to their homes, and also this is really important in Mexico because this case opened the horrendous number of people disappearing during that time. We were close like 35,000 people disappearing 10 years ago. So now we're in a larger scale is 117,000 people disappeared now in Mexico. For the last 10 years, like 77,000 people were disappeared, which is a large number. So we're talking about humanitarian crisis in Mexico. But this is also one important thing that the Ayotzinapa case revealed. These large of cases of people disappearing. And also in Guerrero, in the small towns around Iguala, another group of people just rise and they call it Los Otros Desaparecidos. And they start saying, well, sorry, but yeah, I got my father is disappeared, my brother is, my sister is disappeared. So that, for example, gives us a lot of context to investigate Ayotzinapa to determine several things. The first one, the way like the disappearance happens. There's a machinery, there's a way to disappear a person that give you the answers, not only by the case of the students, also by comparing, by working with different cases around in the same area, around the same cities, and also Iguala. So the number during that time was like 300, 350 persons disappeared in the same period of the same years of the students case happened. And also when you, for example, part of the things that the tools that we develop, and also the Fiscalia was working with that before we arrived at the office, we conduct several search. And for example, a search comparing with another search and findings and places to where they just disappeared the people, that give you tools to create patterns. By creating patterns, so who did it, or who could did that, or why, or the way like what kind of instruments they use, the way like the people were finding it or not. I mean, that give you a language to understand also. So you link that to your investigation, so you can determine even patterns of responsibility for people who conduct this disappearance. But yeah, this is what's really important. I mean, the same state who were part of the disappearance, and then to create a cover up and also open the door to say like, yes, of course, the experts can come. But the first report of the experts when they released was really important because this is create like a sigma. This is create also another political crisis because the government believe like we just need that someone from international level come and say that we had a great investigation here. So that's what the government expected during that time, and it was not the answer by the experts. So that's also create create also additional conditions to receive the international support. And
I think
the
that's
second
a very
report
important aspect, no? As you said, the international support, which perhaps came also through different resources to Mexico, if they gave an impression that they're doing their job, no? That, I mean, perhaps also one of the reasons why in the first place they created this special office for Ayotzinapa case, which you led as a prosecutor, was also to satisfy not only the society, but also to show to the world, hey, we are Mexico, we are doing our best. We are adopting a special law on disappearances. And we are also creating a special office just for the case Ayotzinapa.
And also just wanted to say that when this happens, the government did not accept anymore the support of the experts. So the experts needs to leave Mexico. And then the Inter-American Commission with the government create another agreement to create a special mechanism to follow up the recommendation of the experts. So that gave a transition between the last government of an AMLO and the government with Peña Nieto that created a breach. And then when AMLO arrives to the President AMLO arrives to the government in 2018, that's another model, another experience that we had in these kind of cases, and also in Ayotzinapa. So the first action was the president signed a decree 2 days he was appointed in the position. He signed this decree and he creates a truth commission, not like the truth commissions that we know in the scope and the perspective of the international justice and just transitional justice. This commission was kind of like a motor to move and get the access to information inside the government.
Mm-hmm.
And also the other thing that they create a special unit to investigate the case when I was appointed in 2019. And also the UN system and the Inter-American Commission, and also the families and the lawyers working together. So this gives you another interesting structure to fight impunity inside Mexico. That's because this was really powerful. I can say that the commitment of the authorities when they arrived in 2018 was really strong to resolve this case. Also, the things change as long as the investigation happens and advance. But the first step that the authorities did, joining with the families, with the support of the lawyers and the families, that give you another mechanism to break those silence, to find the kids, that was the main intention, to find truth and justice for the families, and conduct a good investigation, and not investigation who was really full of really illegal actions.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you've mentioned yourself the word impunity, which is probably something that appears quite often when we listen, different situations about Mexican context, but particularly when it comes to cases regarding organized crime as well. So when you actually assumed your office in 2019, evidently you had to face a number of different challenges. And I assume that a lot of them were related to the fact that you had to prosecute a high-level case linked, with organized crime, which also meant going to places that were not perhaps particularly safe. But was there anything particular that you would highlight as the biggest challenge when one, as a prosecutor, basically gets to investigate case linked with such activities as it was this one?
Well, yeah, conducting the investigation had several challenges. Well, the first one is it wasn't a structure, for example, of people that was working at the office that I just received, because it was this office that they create to follow up the recommendation of the experts. That was a group of people, for example. And the first challenge that I had, it was if I wanted to work with that theme to conduct the investigation that we need to conduct. And as you know, in transitional justice, you got only a few chances and the opportunities to conduct good investigations because the system by itself is probably a challenge. Yeah. And that, for example, give us the first step. The second one was the information. Ayotzinapa case was split in several offices around the Fiscalía General de la República, which was the FGR, and then there was a change in the law. So in 2019, it was the autonomous prosecutor's attorney general's office, and for example, the challenge was to gather the whole information to have a complete view about the whole case, and that, for example, that was a good practice. To have the advances, the disappearance until the cover up of the case.
And just add to this, Omar, for the greater understanding, in my understanding, the issue was the fact that sometimes in Mexico, at the prosecutor's office, you have a number of very specialized offices, as if I say, for kidnapping, for drug trafficking, for highly organized crime. And sometimes the pieces of each information would get basically spread around. So you would have to go pick up and try to get all this information which will be relevant to you. Would this be the case that you were referring to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that was the case. I mean, because it's that happens. I mean, if you're linked, for example, they stole a car, but this car is stole by the criminal group and also by a disappearance. So you get three different offices working in the same case, but with different visions, and they never connect each other. So we try to gather the whole case together, and that gives us that. So, for example, the crimes that we investigate, it was not only the disappearance of the student, it was not only organized crimes, it was the whole scope of different crimes like torture, obstruction justice, disappearance in the two ways to the disappear. Because the law in Mexico, the law changed in Mexico. And part of this recommendation of the group of experts was to create a new law of enforced disappearance. And for example, this law give you the definition of the enforced disappearance crime, such as we know in the international treaties, but also give you another door as a investigator you have is like the people who create the cover-up is part of the disappearance to respond that questions. So they have another additional article who say that. So we use that too. So we use the two visions of disappearance, the disappearance of the students, but also the people who try to disappear by creating a false evidence, um, and a false version of what it really happens, because you're denying the truth and the access to justice to the families to find their kids. So this is something, I mean, we had obviously a large discussion about this because that sounds more like obstruction to justice. But for example, we just bring that to the
It is a
judge.
special offense, right? This is a special offense in any criminal codes. Yeah, obstruction to justice, but probably carries a much lower penalty than enforced disappearance, I imagine. No, it's a
The
different.
laws say they have the same penalties as the
Ah.
same crime as a disappearance. So, but that was not our resolution. As you know, the prosecutor's office is gather information, focusing and conduct a good investigation, and bring those elements to a judge, and a judge needs to decide if you did a good job or you need to more get from you need to get more information, or with the elements that you show to the judge, there's enough to open a trial. So we bring those cases to the judges and they accept those cases. And it was really interesting because the judges also start working that. That was the first time they used these kind of crimes, for example. But yeah, that's part of the challenges, like use the system. Another main challenge that we gather is like the access of information that we did. I think we were very lucky because we get access to amounts of information provided by the Truth Commission, provided by the experts. They work together because we work together, and provided by the authorities. And also that give you another vision. For example, one example is um, um, the federal level authorities of intelligence were followed the kids like 2 weeks before the disappearance happens.
Mhm.
We have also a question on
Yeah.
challenges regarding engaging with families in such a context, because we mentioned, or you mentioned also the structural problem, which was a challenge because you were a prosecutor, you were part of the state. At the same time, the state was victimizing the families and was responsible for the disappearance. So was it a challenge how you managed to engage with families, to build trust, to also to manage expectations in such a structural context of lack of justice?
Yeah, well, I'm as I mentioned, I work in this case since it happens. I was working with the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights office in Mexico, and when this appearance happens, they send me with another colleague to start the interview and the process of the case to document the case. So that was my first link to the case, and we arrived at the rural school at Ayotzinapa, and we started interviewing the survivors. The students who were in Iguala during that night. They just flee away from in the mountains, or they just survive and that night, and also the family. So that was the first link that I had with the case. Um, and then I linked with the case working with the experts as the secretary of the experts. So many of the things that I did, it was try to find and try to create those links with the whole counterparts that we had in that case during that time. So part of that counterparts were the families too. So I started meeting the families. So when I arrived as a prosecutor, part of the support, and probably that's part of the decision that I took as to be the prosecutor, was the support of the families. So the families trusted me, and they told me that. So they say, Omar, we trust in you. You know the case. You've been working with us. We're trusting you. So we wanted you to be our prosecutor to conduct this investigation. And also the families turn, now was appointed as a prosecutor, they turn as someone who obviously they're gonna let you do your work and or not do your work. We open several spaces, for example, for accountability with the families, several spaces to meet with them, to talk, because an investigation is not your investigation, it's the investigations of the families or the people who is looking for to find justice. And also the Mexican law give you these kind of tools. But like I say, we create, so the families turn, not the people who just support you and put you in the position, but also they just the people who demand from your work that you do your job. So this is kind of accountability mechanism. So, for example, at the end of my time that I work as a prosecutor, we held meetings inside the Attorney General office every 15 days. Myself and my team sitting together to inform the families what were the advances or the challenges or the not access to information that we had to conduct a whole investigation of the case. So the families receive the information directly from the authorities, which is the way like it's supposed to be in any case, not by someone else, no, by the same authority who has the investigation in their hands. So this is something really, really important. That's, for example, that give me the freedom to return to them and tell them, watching their eyes and say, sorry, I just can't conduct your investigation because we do not have the conditions to keep that way. There's a political influence. There's political decisions who try to obstruct the way like we conducting this investigation. Because that's when I retired. The family say, we understand that. Obviously, it's too sad, Omar, for us, but we understand. Because the first thing what they told me when I arrived as a prosecutor, they told me, please don't sell yourself. So that was the strong commitment that I had with the families to always stand by the truth, to always tell them where were the main things, the main findings, the way like we were working on the case. And that's probably shows something that we have not the practice in my country, in Mexico. I don't know, probably there's another experience in other places of the world, but in Mexico, it's kind of like a hard that you can find your prosecutor, your investigator working hand to hand and show it what you have and working hard with this case. And that's what we just practice, and we try to be really, really serious with them.
Because somehow, in a way, already interaction with families, it's already part of the battle, no? That they usually have to fight in cases of enforced disappearances, is that they have no response from the states. Already feeling that you are there for them and responding to them for sure already makes them feel as if they're in a way effectively searching, if you like, because at least they feel that they have support in their battle. But I also wonder, Omar, like specifically in your case, since, we've seen like in many cases around the world, there has been now this discussion on whether the new technologies can improve the investigation and to which extent they can. You know yourself for sure as well that the Working Group on Enforced Disappearances published a study of the new technologies on how they can be used, of course, to solve cases, on how they can be used as well to perhaps commit enforced disappearances. So in your case specifically, was there any new advanced technologies that you used as well in your investigation, or not really?
Yeah, for example, I think part of the technology that we use for example, for the search of the students, we use and that was evidences what they had in the investigation when I arrived. They already did like this large scan of several areas in Guerrero, determined by the forensic group of experts, the Argentinian group of experts, the EAF.
The
And
forensic, yeah, the
yes,
forensic.
and the Mexican authorities with the support of the lawyers and the families. And so we work on that. That's the LiDAR technology that give you very good access to the urn, and you can see the change of colors of the ground, and that give you another access to do we're gonna looking for this place. So you work that in the lab, and then you go to the earth and to the reality, and you dig in. For example, that kind of things give you that. But also, another expertise and example that I can share to you is we got the lucky and the opportunity to get some videos that document torture of the people to create historical truth. And part of the reaction of the authorities in Mexico immediately say, no, we can work with these evidences. They don't work. You should leave those messages. So we just not stop there. And that's the kind of solutions that you need to think when you have these kind of cases. You got to be creative to see where or who can give you some good results about your evidences. And for example, those videos were working by the government of Spain, and they give you voices and images of those videos to document and to create responsibility against the people who tortured people. Another thing that we did is another is not technology, for example, talking about evidences, and we got access about the wiretaps that were the from Chicago for part of the authorities in Chicago, because this case also reflects that a transnational, you know, drug trafficking between two countries, Mexico and US, and mostly of the buses that depart from Iguala Guerrero arrive in Chicago. So you got the same group of the organized crime group working in two places. So, for example, by international mutual legal assistance, they provide us a group of evidences that give you the link between the cartel in two countries, but also the link, for example, strong link between authorities and group of the cartel members.
We got some questions in the chat regarding security concerns too. Again, because of this structural situation where the state is, the armed forces, the police is colluded with the non-organized crime or illegal organizations. So a normal question would be, who is providing security, right, in the state, in particular where you were being a prosecutor, you were investigating on delicate issues. So how did you navigate on your team these kind of security concerns in Mexico?
We always try to not lose the focus that we had. Obviously, there was a lot of things around us, a lot of noise, but we try to keep always focus. Our work was try to find the students, and we did. We find two remain ones that identify two of the students, and unfortunately, we can find more. And also, we try to gather justice and find justice for them. We just our work as prosecutors. We
don't hear you now.
sorry,
We hear.
sorry.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah, I can hear.
oh, okay. Like I said, we indict more than like 120 people involved in the two events, the disappearance of the students, but also in the cover up. Obviously, high ranking officers, high ranking people from the several institutions in the Mexican state. And obviously that creates a lot of enemies, of course, and people who try to say like well, these guys, they're doing the job, they're coming from us, and also that give you another positive aspects. Like I said, we just try to focus on the work that we need to do, because like and you're working on transitional justice issues now. um I remember part of my training in these issues in Chile with the professor Jose Salaquet. I remember he told us once that as long as you can get access in a small window, not the main door, not the big door, just a small window, you got to do your work very, very deep. And that's always in my mind. So that's what we try to create with the team. I said that I received an office. It was 70 people working there. We reduced that to 30 people, mostly young people from the strong universities in Mexico and different disciplines. So it was like, so that give you something really, really compact. But one thing that I just can be sure that we create, it was like a strong dynamic working for this important case in Mexico. Obviously, probably we were very naive, but we believed that we wanted to do something different, and I think we just did our job.
Well, you make it sound very easy, but I'm sure that on a daily basis it was not that easy, and that oftentimes you did have to think twice how to navigate, the question of security. But clearly you had a strong goal and you were so committed to what you were doing that this was your main priority at any price. Still, at some point, you left Mexico, because right now we are speaking to you as you are in San Francisco. And I wonder whether you are still in touch with the case. I mean, do you know about the most recent developments? What really has been going on since you left, which was in 2022, if I'm not mistaken?
Mhm.
So
Sorry.
do you know about the most recent developments of the case? What has happened? Has anything else been clarified since you left, or what is really going on with the case, Ayotzinapa?
Oh, yeah, they indict, for example, I remember 16 members of the army, which is something positive. Some other parts kind of like hard to understand by the media. I just follow the case now in the media. I'm not involved anymore in the case. Uh, but for example, they say no. The group of experts, part of the strongest position they live when they left Mexico, they need to flee Mexico too. Was it was an 800 something number of documents, but the army need to deliver to the investigation, and the army say no, we don't have any of those. But then when they leave, and also months later, they say, oh no, we find 15 here. Oh, we find 13 here. So it was kind of like what you did not say that you have no more documents. So you already have those documents. So you were checking your document. You say, well, we can release those 15. There's 13 documents. So it was kind of like a fun and funny to see that, because it's not serious. It's not serious for the families, for finding the truth. Like if you really want to show some commitment for the truth and the justice of this case, you got to be serious even with the evidences and the release of the information. I mean, these kind of cases also needs to help to do betting, for example, as part of the transitional justice tools that you have, because it's not only bad apples that conduct these kind of things. It's a structure that could be working in the back of that illicit crimes that it committed, you know?
One
But yeah.
question. Yeah, one of the questions interesting here, thinking about Mexico, the level transitional justice maybe could be or challenge, or we could even have a discussion on the applicability of this level. But was it useful, at least the framework of transitional justice, in your work as a prosecutor? As a prosecutor, you mentioned a bit this idea of looking at the systematic aspect of violence, gathering information, but was it useful, this framework, in your work? You already mentioned that you got inspired by Salaquet, one of the leading, the seminal authors in transitional justice and legal experts working in Chile.
Yeah, one thing, this is my personal position. I don't think that in Mexico we have a transitional justice era, or, we don't have that breakdown, something that you need to start talking about transitional justice. But in my investigation, with my background as a human rights investigator, and we use the tools for transitional justice because they give you, as long as a vision for that, also the advice of the experts and the whole people involved in the case, that this case advance and happen. But for example, in search, truth, to I talk about to depuration inside the office, we use the tools, for example, for vetting. So because that's something that is right there. It's very practical, and yeah, and give you sense. For example, we use a lot of resolutions by the UN, sentences by Inter-American System, to opinions by the group of experts on for disappearance, the committee. We use a lot of that, for example, for the indictments, for the arguments from the judges. And part of those arguments are supported by the tools of transitional justice. So that was really, really important. And even for my team, I train, or we try to develop capabilities, capacities in the team, and to have this kind of large vision about this important case. And yeah, yes, we did. I mean, we used them. Yes.
So Omar, we slowly have to finish the public part of the lesson, this event. But Agustina has started with a quote from the families. So I'll end before I ask you my last question with a short quote from the families, which was said by one of the mothers some years after the events took place. And it's cited from an article on Ayotzinapa case from a torture journal. So she says, "Sometimes I think about it, but then I feel guilty. I think there is still hope. And I think I shouldn't think he's dead. I think whether he has eaten, whether he's hungry, whether he's being treated well. If it's true that my son is already with God, I want to see his body. I will continue to wait for my son until I'm proven otherwise. Don't ask me to kill my hopes." Omar, will you continue to fight for the case Ayotzinapa, even if it's from far away? Maybe you're not in Mexico anymore, but where you are now?
Well, one thing that I learned from working in this case for many years is that do you recall now the hope of the mothers and the families, and obviously they give you that too as a tool, that you never lose the hope that the Mexican authorities have the commitment to find the students and responsible, bring justice to them. That would be great. I mean, I'm not part of that, and also obviously my mind and my thoughts and my heart will be with the families, of course, because they teach me a lot. Uh, but I think taking that experience of the Ayotzinapa case and another in my background, I think I can help another efforts in a different cases too. That would be probably my next challenges.
Sometimes I've heard families saying, el dolor es nuestro motor, no? The pain is our motor, which would be in English, but in Spanish, it's a rhyme.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think. I believe that's what he creates this. That's why Ayotzinapa never ends, and never let the shows dismiss in the atmosphere. That's what the families just be the heart that keep beating to keep the Ayotzinapa case alive and in a public space. Yes, and that turns the dignity of the families too.
Thank you very much for this insightful conversation. we had to left some questions without answer, but because of time concerns, but we can discuss them later with the students. So thank you very much, Omar. Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you very much, everyone who joined this session, those that shared their questions, comments, and those that were there just listening. Now I invite the students to join the second link. I just make a reminder that this is only the first session of our series, Voices from the Ground. The next session will be on the 9th of December on Nepal, a very different context, but also with the struggles and challenges regarding justice after the armed conflict. So with this, we can, we are, Anna is, yeah, Anna.
So I've copied, Omar just told us about the new documentary on Ayotzinapa case from HBO, right? I said, you said, Omar, so I just copied the link, which was released very recently. So perhaps we would recommend you to look into that, to also perhaps get deep insight into the facts of the event, which are pretty complex. And I've also shared my email, and perhaps Agustina can also share her email just in case you have further questions also for Omar. We can always send them to him, and then you can get your response as well. But we are entirely grateful for this, really inspiring conversation, Omar, and see you in a bit in a private space.
Thank you very much for the space. Thank you for the people who assist to this short hour, obviously, to talk about Ayotzinapa. You need any time, but thank you so much. I'm very, very grateful with you.
Great. See you soon. Bye-bye.